After Trayvon Walker was extended by the Jacksonville Jaguars, that left a lot of Jags fans wondering who could be next, who is potentially waiting in the wings when it comes to a contract extension that James Gladstone might give out this offseason. We're going to highlight two guys that ESPN's Adam Schefter, ironically, highlighted in a tweet after Trayvon Walker got extended, in Parker Washington and Brenton Strange, who, spoiler alert, I believe both guys deserve an extension. We're going to talk about what those extensions could look like on today's Jags Now, presented by Chat Sports. I am your host, Cullen Brown, and I'll ask you guys this. Do you want the Jaguars to extend both Parker Washington and Brenton Strange? Hit the like button. It greatly helps us out here at the channel, and it's a great way to kind of push this video out to other Jags fans that may also want to get in on the conversation. We're trying to grow the community here, so if you could, hit that like button. It would be greatly appreciated. So just kind of rehashing the Trayvon Walker contract extension. I did an at-home video last week whenever the news initially broke, but I just wanted to give kind of just some last-minute thoughts, and I've had some more time to kind of think about it. And here are the details of Trayvon Walker's contract extension. It was a 4-year deal, $110 million contract, averaging about $27.5 million per year, with 77 total guaranteed money. And Trayvon Walker, former number 1 overall pick, he naturally is going to always be compared to Aiden Hutchinson, but that doesn't mean he hasn't been a productive player at the National Football League level. Like, he is a guy that's had 10 sacks in multiple seasons. You see the pressure numbers on your screen. Really productive in terms of just collapsing the pocket, setting the edge. I think he's come a long way since he originally was drafted by Jacksonville out of the University of Georgia. And I really do think this contract could age well for Jacksonville. The more I've kind of slept on it, with the salary cap continuing to increase, and that you've got both your kind of edges locked in now in Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, that contract, while yes, at the moment it isn't in top 15 in terms of highest paid edge rushers, I don't imagine it would stay that way. We'll see where Will Anderson will potentially reset the market, and other edges along this offseason I think could be ahead of Trayvon Walker. And by the time it even reaches the end point of the deal where the cap hits really start to skyrocket, I think the Jaguars could come out huge winners in this ordeal. And Trayvon Walker obviously also comes out a winner, getting $77 million in guaranteed. So likewise, I think it's a win-win for both parties. Now moving on to the point of the video that you guys came in and joined for. Adam Schefter, immediately after the Trayvon Walker news was announced, tweeted this out last week, saying this: next on Jacksonville's to-do list, contract extensions for both Parker Washington, Brenton Strange, each of whom is entering the last year of his rookie contract for both Strange and Washington. We'll go about this one by one, starting with Parker Washington. The former Penn State Nittany Lion really emerged for the Jacksonville Jaguars this past season in his third year in the National Football League. 95 targets, 58 receptions, 847 yards, 5 touchdowns on 14.6 yards per catch. But what really stood out about Parker Washington's season last year was how late he really kind of just came onto the scene in terms of his level of production. From weeks 15 to 18, this is not even counting the playoff game against the Buffalo Bills, he had 22 receptions for 400 yards, which was roughly 47% of his total yards for the season, all in 1 month. Kind of crazy to think about. And then 2 touchdowns at 18.2 yards per clip. Him and Trevor Lawrence, they just seemed to find a connection and a vibe. And, I mean, when he went out during that Buffalo Bills game with that concussion, the whole offense just didn't seem like they were in the same rhythm that they had been going into the postseason. He is somebody that could very well be this team's wide receiver 1 going forward. And just kind of rehashing the Jaguars' wide receiver numbers from last season. Now, obviously, Jacoby Myers, he had stats with the Raiders that we're not counting here. Before he got traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He, speaking of which, signed a 3-year, $60 million contract to stay with Jacksonville through 2028. You obviously got Brian Thomas Jr., who's on his rookie contract. He's still, at bare minimum, got 2 years left, depending on whether or not the Jaguars pick up his 5th-year option or decide to do so. The earliest they could do that is after this next upcoming season. And then you've got Parker Washington, who led the Jaguars in receiving numbers, as we kind of previously talked about. And to me, he is in prime position to be this team's wide receiver 1. He's got the explosive talent. He's got the punt returning ability. He's really a do-it-all type of player for the Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence really values his role in this offense. I think Liam Cohen really started to see his value the more the Jaguars season kind of progressed. And I was kind of sitting there whenever, we're thinking about contract extensions this entire offseason. I didn't necessarily know what order the Jaguars were going to potentially go in terms of extending guys like Trayvon Walker, potentially Anton Harrison, Parker Washington, Brenton Strange, all these other guys. They went with Trayvon Walker first, but now it does seem like Washington and Strange are next. And when you want to compare what a potential contract for Parker Washington could look like. I went back during NFL free agency, and Rashid Shaheed was kind of a good, I guess, measuring stick, if you will, for somebody like Parker Washington to, if they want to look at what a potential contract could look like for Washington, Shaheed would be a good benchmark. Because if you look at their stats on screen, pretty similar, I would say. Both were over 90 targets on about 58 catches. Washington does have Shaheed beat in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and yards per catch. And both these guys contribute, as you saw at the bottom of your screen, in terms of the punt return game as well, both Parker Washington and Rashid Shaheed. And Shaheed did re-sign with the Seattle Seahawks after being traded from the New Orleans Saints to Seattle. Was a huge part of the Seahawks Super Bowl run this past season. He signed a 3-year, $51 million contract with $34.7 million guaranteed during free agency. So I would imagine Parker Washington would be somewhere similar. So in drawing up this contract for Washington, he could very well sign a 4-year deal, but I just went with a 3-year deal just to kind of keep it apples to apples as much as I could with Shaheed's contract. I project Parker Washington to sign this contract. 3 years, $54 million guaranteed, so around $18 million per year, and $37 million guaranteed, which there's kind of a weird gap between Rashid Shaheed and the next highest paid wide receiver in the National Football League. I think it goes up to from $17 million a year to $20 million per year. I think Parker Washington could slot right in the middle of that, just get $18 million per year. $37 million guaranteed would be a nice kind of benchmark for him. Former day 3 pick out of Penn State would gladly, I think, accept this, and it would be a win-win for both sides. And if he becomes your wide receiver 1, this would be a huge get for Jacksonville. All right, moving on to the second player to talk about in today's video in terms of potential contract extension. That is Brenton Strange, the tight end who I think didn't obviously play all 17 last year, as you see on your screen, but was still very productive. And he is a really well-rounded tight end. 46 catches, 540 yards, 3 touchdowns, 11.7 average. And Liam Cohen, we know, I think, does value the tight end position and what Brenton Strange potentially brings, because not only is he a plus as a receiving option, as a blocker, you see the numbers on your screen, his PFF grades, 60.5 in pass block, 74.1 rod blocking grade. To me, if you're looking at the entire landscape of NFL tight ends, Brenton Strange is a really solid all-around tight end that has value in this league. And I think, we'll see what they do with Quentin Morris. They obviously let go of Johnny Munt this offseason. Hunter Long, I wouldn't imagine, is in their long-term plans. But Brenton Strange is kind of like the anchor in that tight end room that this offense will revolve around in terms of any kind of production on a week-to-week basis. And when I think about, okay, who could Brenton Strange's contract resemble? Well, look at Isaiah Likely. So last year for the Baltimore Ravens, these were the numbers between Strange and Likely. And it's not even really close. Brenton Strange, just 46 to 27 receptions, 540 receiving yards to 307, 3 touchdowns to 1. The average yards per catch is similar, but Isaiah Likely going from the Baltimore Ravens to the New York Giants following John Harbaugh to New York, signed a 3-year, $40 million contract with $26 million guaranteed in free agency. And I think Likely is somewhat of a different archetype compared to Brenton Strange, as Brenton Strange is more of a complete tight end, which I think will add to his value. So if I'm sitting there looking at Isaiah Likely's contract at 3 years, $40 million, yeah, we'll see what the potential that I think New York's kind of banking on with Likely and what he could look like in their offense. I think Brenton Strange should get paid more. So my contract projection, for Brenton Strange goes like this. 3 years, $45 million, $15 million per season with $30 million guaranteed. I think that gets him as one of the higher paid tight ends in all of National Football League, but I think he deserves it. And I think he's one of those kind of just low discussed when it comes to the Jaguars' weapons. You're obviously going to mention Bashal Tutin, who's going to take another step in this Jaguars offense in 2026. You obviously got Parker Washington, we just talked about, Brian Thomas Jr., Jacoby Myers, all these different names, Travis Hunter, and even a potential reduced role, at least on the offensive side. Brenton Strange just kind of does his business, will be a reliable big target for Trevor Lawrence, can contribute in the pass block and run blocking game. You got to reward that if you're Jacksonville. And I think that's a very fair contract for both sides. So let me know which contract, by the way, that you guys prefer out of those two. But also get down in the comment section, and I want to hear from you guys. Who do you think gets extended first out of these two names? Parker Washington, type PW, or if you think it's Brenton Strange, type BS down in the comment section below. If I had to guess, I would imagine it would be Parker Washington. I do think that the momentum that he had at the end of the season, I think Jacksonville's going to want to reward him this offseason. It wouldn't shock me if it's Brenton Strange, but I'll go with Parker Washington. I'll be typing my PWs down below. And that is going to conclude this episode of Jags Now, presented by Chat Sports. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like button and also subscribe if you enjoyed today's content. If you made it to the end, we're certainly doing something right here on the channel. So until next time, Jags fans, we'll see ya. Peace out.